Hey, thank you for coming to my presentation here. Welcome to Accelerating Zero Touch Automation with SMPs. My name is Brian Farrell. I'm the Director of IT at BetterCloud. BetterCloud is the market leader for SaaS management platforms. I was here, if you remember, last year at JNUC talking a little bit about how the concept of zero touch IT automation and how we got there. We got a lot of really good interest in it. So I'm back to tell you how we can kind of go even deeper. So we're going to cover we took a survey of hundreds of IT professionals across the profession, and we got some hot market trends that we're going to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about how we get closer to that zero touch IT automation. And we're also going to go into some specifics of how you can automate a lot of your IT operations because nobody likes speaking in generalities. And then we're going to have a little bit of time for questions too. So to kick things off, we did this survey, and what we found was out of all of the apps that a company might have, SaaS applications, only about 10% of them are actually managed by IT. So that's if 110 is the average number, only 11 are managed. That's kind of a crazy small number. And it really means that we need to be able to get a bit more control on those, because what happens is when you don't manage those applications, there's a lot of downtime. The average downtime for SaaS application requests when somebody puts in a ticket is 9.3 hours. It's 6 hours for passwords and MFA resets, and it's 7.2 hours for group and calendar access requests. So just think about that for a second. You can't get into a business critical application. You put in a request for a password or MFA reset, and it takes 6 hours to get that request resolved. That's more than half of a business day loss completely. It's crazy. And when we surveyed everyone, what we found was, broadly speaking, companies kind of fell into one of three buckets. There is the future automators, people who automate less, don't automate anything right now at their current companies. Automation newbies, which is companies who have taken kind of their first steps in automating, but they are automating less than about 50% of the requests that they get. And then automation leaders, companies that automate even more than 50%. And it kind of follows a bit of a bell curve. As you can see, most people fall into the automation newbies bucket. And we surveyed, what they're interested in, the things that they're trying to achieve. So as we're going through this presentation, I think to yourself, where does my company fit in this? First thing is, what drives the need to automate? SaaS applications, environments get increasingly complex to manage. You have to manage access control, permissions, file security, user lifecycle management. It's a lot of mundane tasks, and it's a lot of little things, and it's really easy to miss something. And those mundane things are preventing IT teams from being more strategic and solving larger business problems. So 92% of future automators say they spend too much time on repetitive manual tasks that could be automated. And even amongst the leaders, over 65% agree that they spend too much time on routine work. That's a lot of time wasted, when you could be contributing to kind of real projects with real strategic business value. So the second takeaway from our survey was that the single biggest reason why IT automation, or why organizations want to automate, for the leaders and the newbies, it's so that they can improve security posture, they can prevent data loss, and they can improve the employee experience. And not really surprisingly for future automators, it's to reduce manual repetitive work. So those are the things people want to do. And the third takeaway is really that 80% of organizations say that in the next 12 months, zero touch IT automation will be critical or very critical for data security and IT operational efficiency. This is really strong consensus. So now you may be asking yourself, what is zero touch IT automation? And I think if you go around a room, you probably get 10 different answers if you ask 10 different people. But for the sake of this, we're going to say that zero touch IT is the orchestration of end-to-end automated workflows that replace repetitive manual IT processes. So this goal is to reduce the number of manual touch points as much as possible. It's to put control of important business processes in the hands of those owners or of the stakeholders involved with it. IT doesn't need to be a middle person sitting around just like clicking things to approve and advance a ticket forward. And it really moves beyond just like simple task automation. People want to achieve, the most people, even across the board, automation leaders, newbies, and future automators what they're looking for is kind of comprehensive user lifecycle management. And that includes device procurement too. Another thing that I found really interesting is that, you know, zero touch IT automation is also going to be not just important for improving end user experiences and reducing mundane tasks, but the side effect of that is it directly contributes to how well you're able to keep and retain really good IT talent. In the industry, there's about 22.9% average IT turnover, but 81% of people in IT say that they're open to new opportunities. So you have a lot of people sitting around kind of looking for a reason to start something new. And the most common reason that people leave organizations is to learn or advance IT automation skills or to work in a more automation friendly environment. And the second most common reason is to avoid doing repetitive manual tasks. I mean, if you think about it, do you want to be sitting around all day resetting passwords, or do you want to be, learning how to make complex projects come to life with automation and getting new skills? So I'm with BetterCloud. BetterCloud is the market-leading SaaS management platform. We deliver concrete, measurable ROI. So we solve 3 use cases, which is SaaS app insights, so discovering applications and getting more visibility into them. SaaS user management, so user lifecycle management for people who join the company, move within it, leave, and then data protection. So content scanning, data oversharing, risky OAuth, that type of thing. And when I say measurable ROI, these are actual numbers for use case data. And in a year, our platform is able to save an average of 920 hours per customer. So that is roughly 44% of one full-time employee's workload for an entire year. And when you break that down a little bit, it's about 291 hours or 4,300 steps in for onboarding specifically. And for offboarding, it's even more. It saves up to 644 hours on average for every customer over the course of the year. So taken together, what that translates into is over 10, almost 11 million manual steps we've saved for all of our customers across the board over a year, and 91,000 hours. It's a lot of hours. And what it means is it speaks to the experience that we have knowing how to automate things, put into best practices, and we give people the tools that they need to do that. Now, how can BetterCloud get you closer to zero-touch IT operations? I've been doing this for a while. I've been at BetterCloud for over 4 years. I used BetterCloud prior to starting. We're going to go a little bit deeper into actually how to make this possible. Zero-touch IT operations requires kind of 3 pillars. It requires something to manage devices, identities, and applications. So on the device side, we're at JNUC. Jamf is great MDM. That's how we can manage our devices. On the identity side, you probably have an identity provider like OneLogin or Okta or Azure or Google to ensure that the identity of your employees is the same across all applications and devices. And then in the application side, you have BetterCloud to manage all of the granular, very detailed user orchestration, file security, events within all of your SaaS application stack. Now, when we looked at the data for my own team, our IT team, what we found is that we automated nearly 50% of all of our requests through workflows in BetterCloud. This data was from a 6-month period. We had about 2,600 manual types of requests that we get, and 17% of them were resolved with one-touch workflows, meaning we moved somebody to a group or we clicked a button to start a workflow. Still something that we had to do manually, but replaced a lot more manual steps. And almost 30% of them were resolved with zero-touch workflows, meaning the trigger for that workflow and that automation came from some external source. It came from our HRIS. It came from somebody else taking an action somewhere, meaning we didn't have to get involved at all. So almost 30%, completely zero touch. And so that cut down our entire set of requests, the 2,600 requests, by nearly 50%, which means we can do a lot more with a fairly small team while maintaining a 99.6% employee satisfaction rating. We're going to talk about a couple of actual use cases, so user lifecycle management and self-service requests, which cover really like a large portion of the things that you really want to start automating. Now, on the user lifecycle management piece, you may think it sounds pretty simple. People come on, people move, people leave. But when you dive into it a little bit more, you have to think about like all of the small granular steps that are happening within those events. When somebody starts at your company, how does the data move from recruiting and hiring into your, into your Google Workspace or into your Microsoft 365? How do you handle devices? How do you manage training? How do you create accounts for people and manage licenses and teams? When people are offboarded, making sure that you're transferring files to the user's manager, that you're revoking access in a very quick way, that you're able to wipe devices, and that you can archive licenses and reclaim those. Now, a lot of things that people don't necessarily consider are what happens in the middle. Users start and they start to get access as they move throughout the organization. That access is never changed or never revoked. If somebody moves from your support team to your marketing team, they may have access to a lot of data that they don't need as somebody in marketing. Roles change, names change, groups change, people are promoted, people report to different people, and you have to consider all of these factors. So what it used to look like before BetterCloud is that somebody would be hired, HR would notify IT, IT would have to route requests to their manager, the hiring manager, for approval. The manager would have to approve. We'd have to manually action a ticket and create accounts in Office and Zoom and Google and Dropbox and Atlassian and everything. With zero touch, with BetterCloud, a candidate can be hired, a ticket can be created. BetterCloud takes in that ticket, automates all of those steps to notify, to get approval automatically, to create accounts, and then to update that ticket with the status. And if we dive even a little bit more deeper here, so to give you a more concrete example, let's say we've got somebody who's hired in our marketing team. We have not just one, but several workflows that actually run. We add them to, we have a general new user workflow that adds people to company distribution groups, adds them to an events calendar, adds them to, gives them basic Zoom access and Slack. And then because they're in the marketing team, we want to add them to a marketing group and a calendar, and maybe upgrade their Zoom license, add them to specific Slack channels. And then also because they're in Atlanta, one of our offices, we want to add them to Atlanta-specific groups, an Atlanta events calendar, a channel, different things that are specific to each kind of more granular part of who they are. This could go a step further. You could have another workflow that runs for managers, specifically people managers. You could have another workflow that runs for kind of at the sub-departmental team level. And in addition to all of this, on the device side, we've got laptops that are being ordered, added to Apple Business Manager, into Jamf. BetterCloud can add people to Jamf user groups and then scope applications to that user group as well. Like I said before, as an IT person, I don't really like to speak just in general, vague statements. I like screenshots. I don't believe things unless there's a screenshot to back it up. Here's a GIF. This is an actual onboarding workflow. Kind of shows how easy it is. It's just, it's easy, but you need to think about that there are a lot of steps in here. You got to do a lot of things. So now that you have this workflow built out, how do you initiate it? There's a couple different ways. You can run these workflows on demand. You can, this is common in cases where like something like a time-sensitive offboarding, where you really want to be extremely precise about exactly when it happens. But you can also run them automatically. For a very long time, BetterCloud has been able to initiate workflows via triggers like moving somebody into a group or out of a group, changing their organizational unit, creating or deleting users. But more recently, we've added the ability with some extended triggers to take in data from another source like an HRIS or a ticketing system, or even just like a form that's submitted that can send a webhook into BetterCloud, capture the data that's in that hook, use it as variables in the workflow and then trigger that workflow automatically. So on the employee offboarding side, this is another example of a workflow. This is a GIF of an actual offboarding workflow, lots of steps that are covered. Things that like revoking access, reclaiming licenses so they don't sit unused and cost you money. We lock the laptop with Jamf immediately during the offboarding workflow. We transfer Drive documents, Zoom recordings, Dropbox files, Office documents, etc., to a person's manager automatically, which looks them up. And we send notifications throughout this process to let everybody involved, the managers, business partners, et cetera, kind of know what the progress of that offboarding is. Now, we're at JNUC, so I wanted to give a little bit more information about some of the actions that are available for Jamf within BetterCloud. The most common ones we use are lock device, for instance, or adding a user to a group. Like I said, you can you can do it in an offboarding workflow. You could even do it if there's some suspicious activity or a device has been stolen. And adding users to groups can help you, scope, for instance, if your engineers use IntelliJ, you may not want that to be available in self-service to everybody. So you can add these users to user groups automatically via a workflow and then set a policy that's scoped to that Jamf user group and only show the applications that they should have access to. And there is a number of other actions that we can take within Jamf as well. A bonus, like I said, we also have workflows for lost or stolen devices. So what happens in this workflow is, a user is added to a group for lost or stolen devices. Very quick thing. You could either automate that, if you wanted to, based on some triggers like suspicious user activity or something like that, or if user reports it to you or fills out a form, you can add their user to a group like a Google group automatically, and then in BetterCloud, when a user is added to that group, we can go ahead and send a lock command to the user's device. We send the user and our security team and the manager an email letting them know that the device has been locked. And then we remove them from the group after a couple of days because that's the trigger that's initiating this. And then, 20 or 23 days later, in this case, you could send another email with a wait for approval step that says, hey, can you confirm whether or not you got this device back? If they say, yes, it's still stolen, or yes, it's still lost, they can actually wipe the device then remotely as well, all automatically. Now we're going to talk a little bit about self-service requests, the kind of end-to-end experience before BetterCloud. When people ask for, one-off apps or something like Zoom, they need a Zoom license. Somebody may submit a ticket. It has to go to IT for approval. It has to then be manually routed to the manager for approval. Even if it's routed automatically, it comes back to IT, and then the IT still has to action that ticket. They have to go and upgrade the person's Zoom license, for instance, or create an account in something, and then communicate back to the user, and the user gets access. With ITSMs or chat help bots and BetterCloud together, we can make this a lot more straightforward and automated. A user can submit a request with a Slack bot or something like that. A ticket can be created automatically, and then a BetterCloud workflow can run that goes to approval to the user's manager, maybe goes to approval to IT. Once that approval has been granted, it can automatically grant access to that application, or it can make changes within that application, like upgrading a Zoom license, and then it can go back and close out the ticket and can inform the user that they now have access to everything. And all of that stuff happens without manual intervention. What I hope you kind of took away from this is that there's a lot of really easy ways to automate a lot of the steps that your team may be handling manually today that can really improve the end user experience. It can improve the quality of life for your team. And it also improves data security. A lot of these manual steps, is every single person going to do each manual step the same way every single time? If you have 40 different steps, are they going to forget one? Are they going to skip one? And you can do all of this with a no code kind of workflow automation way. We also leverage best practices. We have a broad range of experience automating with all of our customers So we've collected a lot of that knowledge, and we've even made templates so you can get started with onboarding workflows, offboarding workflows, everything, leveraging a lot of existing best practices. So you really don't need to reinvent the wheel. And we've got a deep library of actions and alerts, meaning we cover a ton of different integrations. You can see a lot more about that on our website, but we also cover a large number of actions within each of those integrations. So the kind of possibilities of what you can automate are endless. Now, this is all of the no-code stuff is all great. I'm not a developer. I can puzzle my way through some JavaScript or a Bash script or something like that, but I'm probably not going to sit and write an app from scratch. But if you do want to go beyond purely no code, you can still accomplish a lot. I mean, with extended triggers, with extended actions, you can actually write custom actions and custom triggers to take data in, take an action within BetterCloud, and send a webhook to another application if it supports a REST API. So the possibilities are kind of endless here. And the top benefits from automation, 70% say that the biggest benefit to automating their SaaS environments have been productivity gains. When we look at organizations with experience with automation, the biggest benefits they've experienced are productivity gains, help or service desk improvements, and fewer errors, and an improved employee experience. And the future automators group here is motivated by slightly different reasons. A lot of times driven by IT talent scarcity. The top benefit they expect is help and service desk improvements, productivity gains, and cost savings. So no matter where you're at in the different buckets of automating nothing, automating some things, or automating a lot of things, there are really a lot of strong benefits to automating that everyone can experience across the board. We're going to have some time for questions. If you have any interest and you want to schedule a demo, please check out our website, bettercloud.com, demo request. Thank you so much for coming to my talk. I hope you're interested in learning more about automation. Feel free to ask any questions.